ప్రేమస్వరూపులారా, విద్యార్థులారా,
Welcome to InSAIde Scoop, a podcast that brings you practical servings of Swami's sweetest teachings. Joining me today is a superstar and national hero, Dr. Satya Rao. Brother Satya needs no introduction, having won the hearts of many while serving as a successful family medicine specialist, the Zone 4 Medical Director, and Young Adult Advisor. Hi, Anne. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Neera, Saira.
As you know, InSAIde Scoop's number one goal is to emphasize honesty, simplicity, and lightheartedness in our spiritual journey. Because that was Swami's priority too, right? So please feel free to be your authentic self as we chat today, okay? Today's discussion is something I personally grapple with. And it revolves around the fact that as young adults today, we live in a society where personal branding and advertising our achievements plays a key role in advancing our career. But whether it's trying to advertise myself on LinkedIn or at networking events, I find this an extremely uncomfortable task. And when I analyzed why I may be experiencing this, I pinned it down to some of the values that I may have cultivated as an SSC student. And that was that being too passionate or assertive is a Rajasic quality that I need to control, whilst being humble and gentle, those are the satvik traits that will lead me to enlightenment. But I feel I must have misinterpreted this understanding of being satvik, because Swami wouldn't have asked us to do something that didn't serve our best interest, right? So I want to start by asking you, what does it truly mean to be a satvik being?
Okay. I'd say that the literal meaning of satvik is pure.
Right.
And breaking this satvik being word, right? Being is a soul that is, covered by the body, mind, and intellect.
Right.
So a satvik being literally means a person who is striving towards the unity of thought, words, and deeds, which is, every aspect of the body, mind, and intellect. So that's why, like Swami always says, right? Unity, purity, and divinity. And, all that things together will bring about the meaning of satvik being. So that's like the theory behind it, I suppose.
Right. So let's unpack this purity a little. Does being pure mean that I can't negotiate a salary increment, have disagreements with my superiors, or even tell my National Young Adult Coordinator that he has too many meetings? Is that what it means to be pure at all times?
Not really. I suppose that I can only speak about myself, because I think all these things happen at day-to-day life, right? Because we work, we face our friends, we have a real life outside there, right? We are not living in an ideal environment in a very of course during COVID times we are all working from home, but there's just so many things that's coming through, either through the social media or the stress of work, or where the boss is asking you work at night till late night. But I can say about myself, I think for me it's easy because the career that I'm doing, the job, like it's easy being a doctor and practicing satvik qualities, because you're always thinking for the betterment of our patients and the environment and all that things. But I also wear another hat, Neera. I'm also the head of department in my clinic. That means I'm always faced with a situation where I need to fight for things. Like, we are a government-funded clinic, on a daily basis, we have about 1,600 to 2,000 patients, and I have 160 staff with almost 40 doctors and 3 specialists under me. So there's a lot of worldly things that's happening. And I have to say that if we do not put in what's required, then definitely we will not be able to manage something. This is where Swami says, right? The heart of Buddha is what we all have to develop. so that the thought process will always be basically the mind and the intellect. So the head of Shankara, Swami says. So like Shankara, we need to think of the best ways of maneuvering around it, which means we will need to be rajasic at times to actually do some things, but with a very underlying quality of heart of Buddha. And that also means the hand of Janaka, right? Doing and doing and doing. Like, King Janaka has been the one who always gives and serves at all times. Right. So yes, we will still need to maneuver around things. We will need to still do things that's required for the worldly life. But just making sure that the heart remains Buddha at all times. That's how I see it, Neha.
That's very helpful, and so that means even if I'm having to advertise my skills on LinkedIn, for example, that's not a non-sattvic thing, right?
Not at all, I think, because see, as we all know how LinkedIn works, right? LinkedIn is a place where everyone is trying to see who is the one that we need for our like if I'm an employer, that's a good place to go and see, who is doing what. But honestly, I feel it's only adharmic or non-sattvic when what you are putting on LinkedIn is not truthful, right? When you are practicing truth and just putting what you have done with a greater intention of just getting what you need. Because everyone has aspiration to either have a certain job or, to actually make certain amount of money, because there is requirement, right? The worldly requirement that is there. So hence, I feel that's really not wrong in publicizing on what we have done. But the intention should not be to boast. The intention should not be to lie. It should be purely truthful. And if someone requires the skill that you've put up in that LinkedIn, then why not? That's how I see it.
Right. Okay. So essentially it boils down to our intentions. And I'm so glad you raised the point about our aspirations, because we all have certain aspirations, right? For a job, etc. But when it comes to having these desires or aspirations, does this purity mean that it's wrong to want to become the highest paid engineer or to buy an expensive car that serves the same purpose as a cheaper alternative, but I really want that BMW? Is that unsattvic?
I really think it depends on what is the whole desire about. So this is where it comes to need versus wants, right? And same like desire versus affordability, right? So if a person desires something, but they are not able to afford for it and still goes for it, it's going to put us in a lot of worldly stress to get the money, to pay the installments, blah, 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 all that things. But if it is something that you can afford and you need it, then why not? I don't see the requirement. Why we can't have that. And also, I suppose, even when we desire it and we afford it, like, what is the need of it or what is the want of it? Then, dedicating it to Swami. Like I remember you said about BMW, and I was laughing because one of my friends always makes fun that I used to drive a BMW, and when I remember when it is definitely, I think, one of my vasanas, because that was something that I always wanted as a child, and I used to only look at these cars and like wanting it. And when the affordability to own one comes in your path, and when we speak to Swami and see what is it that I want out of it, and who is the owner. I remember the number plate that I took was SF Satyasai. Really Swami is the owner of the car, and that's how I look at it. And the seat that is next to the driver's seat, I never put anything on it. This age and time where, all of us are wearing masks, I mean, at least majority of the countries are still, mask is a need for everyone, right? So, I mean, it's so easy to just open the mask and throw it in the next seat. But for me, the next seat, when no one is in the car, it's Swami's seat. It's a conversation that I have with Swami. that's my driving time, my chanting time, my bhajan singing time for Swami. So it really boils down to the basic desire, affordability, dedication, and if that tool is going to help you with constant integrated awareness, I suppose if that's your vasanas, that's your vasanas.
That's beautiful, brother. It's almost as if that desire is purified by you offering it to Swami and constantly incorporating Swami in the way that you use that desire, that BMW, right? And in doing so, what some may say is merely an act of greed has sort of been sanctified into an act of worship. That's a great way to transform our little guilty pleasures into maybe a deeply spiritual practice, right?
Definitely.
But is it enough to do this? I mean, if we're serious about spiritual growth, don't we at some point need to place a ceiling on our desires?
I totally agree. Swami has said one of the 9-point codes of conduct is ceiling on desire, sister. And we do know that Swami has clearly said, right, there needs to be a ceiling for all the 4 things that he's mentioned: food, money, time, energy, and all of it has to have a ceiling. So we do know, right, like maybe between us, right, sister, like if we are served the same amount of food, my ceiling of that food requirement for my life, for my job, will be very different from your life and your job. And a manual worker compared to a person who sits in an aircon room and does the work will require 2 different ceilings of requirement of food. Similarly for money, the person who probably does more service and spends more things for good things will require more of that compared to the other person. And same goes to time and energy and all that thing. So I think at end of the day, who decides where the ceiling is? It's a decision between Swami and you. And that's how it goes. Because I think in spirituality, there's only 2, which is he and me. And that's how I think we need to maneuver through this and decide where it stops and where it becomes, unworthy of practicing the ceiling of desire. So I think that's how I would tie down and where we decide the ceiling on desire be.
But brother, now I'm curious to know, how does this play out in reality? When you say the ceiling is between you and Swami, not all of us are at a stage where Swami gives us answers instantly. So how do we know where that ceiling is, and how does it play out in your life?
In my life, it has always been how I connect myself with Swami. And whenever I would want something or do something, I always do a self-audit at the end of the day and see how it has gone and whether it's a constant learning. I won't say that I have answer for this question, sister. Honestly, it is something that I strive towards knowing it instantly. But Swami being Swami, life is a game, right? He really makes me play the game. And but I always tell Swami, Swami, if I'm the winner, then only you are a winner. So Swami, please make me the winner. That it becomes fun. Life becomes fun, and experiencing success or even failure is almost always the same for me. And that's how I feel I go and strive towards it and eventually get the answer. Sometimes I get it immediately because, the answer comes immediately with it's so pure and so clear. But sometimes it's so clogged. Maybe the mind, something that's blocking the whole thing. But I will say that it's a constant strive and constant practice and constantly auditing to see whether we are getting there. So that's how I practice it.
Right. Okay, so let's just say we have put a ceiling on our desires, because that's important, obviously, right? But again, it's between us and Swami what that ceiling is. But so we've put the ceiling on desires, but then we have this inner conflict because success is measured by society through professional achievements, academic qualifications, stable family life, having amazing cars, huge houses. So when we put this ceiling, does that mean that we won't be successful in the eyes of society?
I see it this way, sister. For me, really, let me give you an example.
Sure.
I mean, when I was young, I have never been academically inclined. Would you believe that, sister?
No. You're lying. Satya is not being Satyam right now.
But this Satya used to be a person who doesn't know how to say ABCD, even when he was 7-8 years old. And when I mastered ABCD much later, at 10 years old, I didn't know how to do times table. At 11 years old, I was still striving to do divisions. And that's how uninterested I was in the academic line. And mind you, your sister, my father is a teacher. And I come from families who have so many lecturers. And what I was inclined was very spiritual since young. I was able to chant Vedam since I was 9 years old. I just need to hear it. I can repeat it. I never need to look at the text. And, I went to Balvikas early in life. So, doing the mantras and remembering stories and, giving, storytelling and all that things. And, mom used to read Swamis Chinnakatha to me, like every night, one Chinnakatha. And I remember every Chinnakathas that, Amma used to teach me. And that's how my growth was. But I realized when I was 10, 11 years old, that, one day my teacher put me out of the class, and she was like, you didn't know how to answer the times table, so you need to stand out of the class. And for me, right, out of the class, and I was practicing bhajan because it was, I think, close to Thursday. Every Thursday we used to have house bhajan. I was practicing bhajan. And then when I looked into the class, I had this thought process. Why don't I try doing this? Try learning proper ways of reading and doing this times table. And, it doesn't matter for me whether it is required for me. Obviously, I didn't feel the need for it, but the world needed it. Right. So I decided, let's go for it. And that's also precisely the time that my Balvikas Guru was teaching us the Gayatri Mantra. And he taught us that Gayatri Mantra is chanted 108 times daily.
Wow.
And sister, I remember every day I used to chant Gayatri Mantra 108 times, every day as a kid. And in less than 1.5 years, not only from a backward class, I came to the front class, but I became the top of my class. Top of the form, I would say, which means in the entire Form 1, which is like, 13th, the 7th standard, I was 13 years old, I immediately became number 1. That also means my whole city, which only has one high school, I was the topper. And that continued till I finished high school, and when I went to college, I was like the highest scoring. When I went to university, I was a merit student and I was honors. And that's how I think it all unfolded. Because it's not just about what we want to do. Practicing a sattvic life, I just realized everything else just unfolds. Whether it is, the time, the money, the riches, everything just comes so easily. And sattvic will definitely attract all the others, because everything that is around the world is energy. That's how I see it. And this energy of food, energy of money, energy of time and riches will all come to us, and it will make us very successful, not because you intend to have it, because they rush to you. That's what Swamis Anugraha and blessings is all about. Practice it and live the life, and everything that you want will come to you. You don't need to strive for it.
That's so beautiful, brother. And your life is like a living proof of the power of these sattvic habits and spiritual practices. I mean, for someone who didn't know
I'm striving towards it. I won't say that it's perfect, but really it's a day-to-day practice and day-to-day trying.
Amazing. For someone who didn't know their ABCs and times table is now a doctor, head of a medical clinic. I mean, that's the power of striving to live a sattvic life. It just attracts abundance, right, from every corner. But
I agree.
Swami says, and this really confused me. He said, Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, they were masters of the material world. And they had tremendous powers because they actually were very disciplined. They did their sadhanas very regularly, consistently, but they directed it along the Rajasic path. If only they had sattvic intentions instead of Rajasic intentions, they would have attained peace and self-realization. That's what Swami says. So is someone who is ambitious and driven, would Swami categorize us as Ravanas or Hiranyakashipus? But at the same time, don't we need the passion of this Rajasic guna to help us accomplish our goals, right? So how do we strike this balance between the tamasic guna, the Rajasic guna, and the sattvic guna?
I think to answer this question, let me mention that Rajasic guna and Tamasic guna are not really negative immediately. I don't think we as humans should just say that, oh, I only want to be sattvic.
Right.
Rajasic energy is very needed. Rajasic is passion, dynamism, it's drive, and everything that is requiring us to move requires the Rajasic energy. And when we do so much of activity, right, we will be tired. We will be drained a little bit. Hence, then we also need a bit of tamas where there is restfulness. But we have to remember when these two, you can look at it at two different opposites, right? One is the Rajas opposite, one is the Tamas opposite. So when the Tamasic energy is so much, you will go into laziness and dullness and pushes you to fear, darkness and ignorance on one side. And when you go so much towards the Rajas, it will be great success. So much like Swami mentioned, right? Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, so much success that they will get in life. But it might drive you towards self-centeredness and boasting and egoism and all that things. That is why we must always be at equilibrium. And that is also why Swami always says, in a day, there's 3 time zones. When we wake up in the morning, 4 to 8 o'clock, Swami says, is a sattvic time, where we in tune with ourselves, where this is the best time that we wake up, and immediately after waking up, sit for a few minutes for contemplation and meditation and concentration and all that things. That gives the boost of the energy for the day. And then from 8 a.m. up to 4 p.m. is a Rajasic time. And this Rajasic time is where everything blooms, right? And you are at the maximum part of your energy, and this is also the time that you do work, you accomplish things that you need to do, worldly life, everything happens at this point of time. Right. And then again at 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. where the sun is setting, again it's sattvic time, right? Where you will again introspect and you will do prayer and you calm the Rajasic energy, and then you go into restful Tamasic. So this equilibrium, which is the sattvic energy, must always be there. Some people, to remind themselves of this equilibrium, they will put timer, every 1 hour once or 2 hours once, just to make sure if you are too Rajasic, you bring down the energy to a little bit lower. So you don't get so drained by evening that you are going into Tamasic immediately without enjoying the equilibrium of sattvic in between. So this equilibrium is like the example I said earlier, heart of Buddha. So this equilibrium is where there is calmness, where even when you go so much to one tangent, where there's so much of Rajasic energy, the hand of Janaka is like the Rajasic energy, and it actually brings you and reminds you of the heart of Buddha. There's calmness even in the Rajas. When, like for me, when I'm in a meeting and I'm, handling the meeting, there's so much of debated arguments about, these allocations and staff and this and that, right? I always calm down with a nice deep breath of Soham. And that really brings my Rajasic energy to a perfect thought process, and sometimes even great ideas, and the intellect is just, immediately, enriched to actually give the best solution in that situation. So if we are in tune with the equilibrium, when you are in Rajas energy, also there is great success because it will unfold. And even when you are in tamas, the rest will become great restfulness, so that when you wake up in the morning, you are charged. And I think that's the best way I can think of answering this question, Neera.
So lovely, brother. As you were speaking, I sort of visualized the satvik guna to be like this steady tambura that is resonating in the background, whilst a classical singer is, dynamically changing her tune or her rhythm. Would that be the right way to look at the balance of these three gunas?
Definitely. And also the omkaram that's at the back, the silent omkaram that's going on in the universe at all times, and that is that energy that we all have to learn to tap in, so that we are charged with energy at all times, because he is the source, right? And tapping it from the source, nothing else, the infinite energy is there for us. We just need to be a vessel to collect it so beautifully. And hence we need to keep this body, mind and intellect satvik, so that the energy will flow into us and through us beautifully. And nice example that you gave earlier.
Thank you so much, brother, for your honest insights into the three gunas. Dear listeners, it's now time for some prasadam pills. 1. Next time guilt creeps in for wanting that car or that piece of jewelry, if within our means, seize this opportunity to spiritualize that desire by using it with him and for him. 2. Leading a sattvic life and achieving material success aren't mutually exclusive. When we purify our life and energy with these sattvic practices, we vibrate at a frequency that attracts abundance. And many people in the organization are living proof that when prayer becomes a habit, life becomes a miracle. 3. All three gunas have a role to play at different times of the day. To live a sattvic life is to maintain that calmness and compassion in our hearts, even as we passionately post on LinkedIn and fulfill all our goals in this game of life. Next on InSAIde Scoop, we explore empathy, equanimity, and the Russian war. Until next Friday, happy scooping!